Hi, and welcome back to part 2 of the built-in bar renovation. In my previous video, I had done part 1 where I built this built-in cabinet. And on this episode, we will be doing a wine rack that's going to go right in this corner so that we can cover up that duct right there and make it a useful space. Okay, so I decided to take advantage of New England spring and come outside. It is still a bit cold, but I figured I have more space out here to cut this with a track saw. So basically what we're going to build is the base for the outer shell rather for the wine rack. So I purchased poplar plywood. I would have probably purchased something more expensive had I been staining it, but because I'm going to be painting it, I could go with the lesser expensive plywood. So I'll be cutting this down to the measurement specific for the wine rack. Okay, so I have my measurements here. I did 12 inches for the wine bottles, and I did 50 across to go from the counter all the way to the ceiling to cover that duct. Okay, at this point I've cut the two side panels. This is the base panel. So the idea is I'm going to have a panel that goes up here to the duct and a panel that goes here to the ceiling. So this is the base part. And what I'm going to do now is put in pocket holes on the underside of it. So this is going to be the face. And this will be the part that you see, but there'll be pocket holes underneath going into the side panels. Here is the wine rack partially assembled. This is the base that I had just done. Underneath is where the pocket holes are, and they are attaching into the side panels. So here you can see that's kind of a custom cut, and that is just to allow for the duct that goes in the closet up into the ceiling, and this side is a full panel. And my next step is putting in this shelf here. And the idea is that I'm going to put the shelf right up to that spot right here. And we're going to close it in the upper half with a panel. So you won't see that. It'll look like custom cabinetry. And here is the piece of 1/4 inch Luan that I'll be adhering to the back. So this will be completely closed in. And that's it for today. Okay, so here is the cabinet build. I have gone ahead and primered it. I didn't want to kind of waste your time in showing you all the steps in painting it, but definitely all the steps in painting it are in my part 1, so you can refer back to that video. So basically what I did is I sanded down the entire cabinet. I used 150 and then 220, and then I hit it with some primer. I used the Zinsser bin primer. Installation kind of caused a little bit of an issue here. There was a piece of strap, much like this one on this side, that came down. But in order to install it in the tight space that I had, I actually had to remove it. So I removed it in the meantime so that I could get it out, so that I was able to paint it. So here it is primered. And then what I'll do next is I'm going to do 2 coats, allowing for at least 2 days between coats. It's the same coat of paint that I've been using. I used it on the base cabinet. Again, you can refer back to my part 1 to see exactly the paint that I used. And then once this is all set and painted, I'm going to go ahead and install it. And then that's where I'll put this piece back on. I'll have to do that when it's already in place so that I can actually fit it in the space. It was just too difficult to kind of it wouldn't fit no matter what I did. So I had to take out something. Okay, here is the wine rack cabinet outer shell, completely painted, and it's the same paint that I've been using right along. And I can't stress enough how amazing this Benjamin Moore Advanced Base 4 paint is. In satin, it is just the most incredible factory finish. I hope you can see it here. It just looks like I spray coated this, and I really just did I just used a roller on it. And it just leaves like this amazing factory finish. I've used it in all of my videos. If you go back to one of my first videos, I refinished a dining room table, and I used the same paint, and it's incredible. It's so good. I can't speak highly enough about it. So this is the outer shell. Now the idea is we're going to do slanted slats in a stained wood that's going to go all the way to the top here. And it's going to be the wine rack. And up here, we're going to do a faux panel to cover that duct that you had seen in the space. So this will be completely sealed off. And here is the wood that I selected for the slats. And I purchased this all in one piece. And this is maple. I almost went with oak, but I changed my mind at the last minute because I wanted something with less detail. Oak tends to have a lot of detail in the rings, so I wanted something a little bit plainer. And I stained it already with the first coat. I'm probably going to do 3 coats. This is red chestnut, and I selected this color because I wanted it to match as close as possible to the dining room chairs. So I'll be staining this again, 2nd coat tonight, and then tomorrow, possibly a 3rd coat. 2nd coat applied, and that is looking a lot more like how I want it. So excited. Okay, so I ended up doing 3 coats of stain and 1 coat of polyurethane. And I ended up using a new product, which is fast drying water-based polyurethane in matte finish. And I actually really like how it came out. And you can see it's not very shiny, and it's just perfect for this particular project. From that board, I'm now going to cut angled shelves, and they'll go all the way up here to this point. For the angled cutting, I'm using the table saw, and it is quite an intricate cut, and figuring out the degree for it to fit this particular shelf. But once I figured it out, I set the fence to the size, and it should be easy cutting from this point forward. Okay, so here are the shelves. So I'm gonna attempt to explain how I got the slant right. This was not easy to do. It took some trial and error, primarily with the size of the spacing between each of the shelves, to ensure that we had equal spaces all the way and that we met with the very last one right here at the corner. So since I couldn't find any detailed instructions on how to get a perfectly spaced slanted wine rack, I thought I would share how I arrived at the measurements that I did and how I got it almost near perfect. I couldn't find anything online, so hopefully this will help you too. So this is the wine rack, and my total inseam, what this measures, was 35 1/4. I didn't go by this measurement because that didn't help me. So what I ended up doing was I ended up putting the first shelf, kind of held it there in place with a clamp, and I measured from the top of the shelf once it was in place all the way to the bottom of the inside of the cabinet, and that measured out to 28. So then what I did is I took I counted how many shelves I was going to put in. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 shelves at 3 1/4 thickness. And that arrived at 4 1/2. inches. So then I had to account for the spaces, but I wanted them to be exactly the same. So what I did is I knew that the total board was only going to give me 28 inches. So what I did was I took the 28 inches that I had minus the 4.5 that I already definitely know is going to be for the 6 shelves, and that got me to 23.5. So then I took 23.5 and I divided it by the amount of spaces that I was going to have. So that's 5. 5 times 4 and 13/16 would get me to 23.5, which would get me to the overall 28. So each single spacer had to be 4 and 13/16. So basically, this is just one of the spacers that I used. It's this measurement from the corner here to this corner. So the outermost corners, that diagonal measurement needs to be 14 and 13, I'm sorry, 4 and 13/16. So hopefully, when you go ahead and build this, I found that to be the easiest way to cheat it so that I didn't have like a little piece up here, or I wanted it corner to corner. I didn't want little pieces at the end. So I just made sure that the spaces were big enough. And also when you're cutting it, you want to make sure that your spaces allow for a wine bottle. 4 and 13/16 is more than enough for a wine bottle. But if you arrived at something, say like 3 inches, that would be way too small to fit a bottle of wine. So my recommendation is do the math, test fit a bottle, and hopefully that works for you. Okay, here's the wine cabinet installed, and it fit perfect. So what I did is I covered the holes with putty. If you remember, there was nail holes to secure each shelf. So I puttied them, I sanded it, and I gave it one coat, so it covered it pretty well. And I also reattached, if you remember, this arm was missing. I reattached it with pocket holes, so that one went into there and that one went down. So that's all set now. And here's how it looks. Came out so good, so excited. And just to show you a wine bottle, that is how it'll fit. So next I'll be working on the face of the cabinet, which will create a nice piece of trim here, and also the panel will get put into place to cover that duct. To complete this project, I now had to create the face for the wine cabinet, which is here. This is it all put together. And all I did to create this was I purchased 2 of these, and this is just poplar wood, and the size is 3/4 by 1.5 by 8 feet. So I measured the wine cabinet from base to bottom and the vertical pieces. And then I measured the inside horizontal pieces. So I did 3 of those. And I'll show you what the back looks like. So all I did was I created pocket holes and I put those all in. And I used Luan here, but I didn't want to sink it all the way back because then it would look not like a cabinet panel. It would be 3/4 all the way back. So that would leave too much of a depth here. So I wanted it to make it look as much as cabinet as possible. So I adhered 1 piece of Luan to the back, just enough to go beyond the entire hole here. So I kind of just went over by, I'd say 1/4 on all 4 sides, and I nailed it. And it was just enough to ensure that this is free so that it can go to the wine cabinet base and that this wouldn't interfere with it in place. And then I laid not 1 but 2 more sheets of Luan in here. So I kind of glued it all together. So there's 1 here and then there's 2 here. And I actually had pre-painted this Luan before. And that's what gives us this depth. So 1/4 inch and 1/4 inch inside and just the 1/4 inch here on the back. I could have cut the grooves like I did the cabinet doors, but I just figured, you know, it's such a simple cabinet piece. It's, you know, it's not going to be usable. It's not like it's a door that you're going to see the back. This is all just going to be completely closed in. So I figured if that's the case, let me just inlay the pieces and it is done. So next I'm going to paint and then I should be installing it. And here's the cabinet front installed and painted, totally complete. And it's now covering that horrible duct that was coming from the corner. Project came out better than I expected and I am thrilled. And this is the entire bar build completed. If you haven't checked out my part 1, you can go ahead and check that out to see how I built that base cabinet. I also have a video on how I created that faux marble countertop. And of course, part 2 was how to build the slanted wine rack shelf. And if you want to see more, check out my shorts and I'll show you how I completed the space with some decor. Thanks for watching.